point of the hitting of the hand? I don't understand what's the purpose of doing the hit, if it's just for the understanding. You have to understand it's easily proven with a logical thought experiment. If I slap a woman in the face as hard as I can and she just falls to the ground in front of a cop, I'm going to jail. I just hit this woman as hard as I could. Now, if I hit her 1/1000th as hard, I took away. I'm still going to jail. At what point do you go down the line and say, this much is acceptable, this much is not?
Exactly. No, but it's a short, sharp shock. You know, you're, they don't expect it. Yeah, it's just a little bit of pain, and they get, that's it. They understand that. Ow!
His argument right now is that, yes, it is possible to call hitting children abuse, but only if it's extreme enough that most people would generally consider it to be. Epic fail. Makes zero sense. Then he trails off babbling incoherent nonsense, misunderstanding basic definitions of words, and complete ignorance of what science actually is.
Exactly. It's the initial reaction that you're trying to give them.
Oh, God. Begging the question. Number 4, red herring. Number 7, and a straw man, all in one sentence.
How'd you do that? Amazing.
Again, no one is debating whether or not the hitting is effective or has an effect. We know that it has an effect. And he thinks the other guy is agreeing with him, and he's saying exactly. But no, the guy was pointing out that a hit is still pain, even if it's light, and you can chart that on a scale from 0 to 100. He was proving my point, and the other dude just doesn't even understand that.
It's not because you're hitting them at full force trying to cause pain. It's more of like, what I'm doing here is teaching you that this is a negative thing. You don't do this. And what happens when you do this, you get negative reactions, right? And this is a negative reaction. You felt pain. You don't want to feel that pain. So now you don't do it anymore. So then they don't do it because they always recognize cognitively that they connect that to the pain they felt when you smacked them on the hand.
See, he's trying to justify the morality of his position, of his premise, his argument. He's trying to justify the morality of it by stating that it is effective, that it exists, while simultaneously denying that he's inflicting pain. And he contradicts himself in the same sentence, as you'll hear. He says, I'm causing pain. Then he says, well, I'm not causing pain. And I tell him, well, yes, you are. You said so in the recording.
Smacking on the hand is not on the face. Stop saying face. It's two different parts.
I can't keep track of the fallacies. This guy it's pouring out of him like a waterfall. That's irrelevant. The point is not the location, as I'll point out in a minute. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can't say, well, I beat up my kid, but it wasn't on the face. The point is, see, he's redirecting the point and trying to prove something else. That's not the issue at hand. The issue at hand is how much pain is acceptable, not where the pain is, and then therefore a certain amount is acceptable or not.
No, it's not. It's still the same pain. You're still hitting nerves. I remember the first time that I slapped my 3-year-old on the hand, and he cried and cried, and the guilt.
You can't differentiate what part of the body. It's not okay to beat your kid. I'm just saying, it's not okay to beat your kids if it was it was just their hands, and their hands, you beat the shit out of their arms and hands. The part of the body is irrelevant. That doesn't matter. And the amount of force you're causing pain, that's the fundamental definition of abuse. You're just talking about it to such a lesser, slight degree that you're defining it as acceptable to you.
I'm not defining it as a slight degree.
Okay, so on the radio, we each get a certain time to speak. Then another user can transmit over you, cutting you off mid-sentence. It's extremely rude. He does it the entire time. I only start cutting him off to finish my point, then it turns to a shit show because people are immature and can't have an adult conversation.
And I never said I'm causing pain. All I said is I'm causing a reaction, an initial negative reaction. That is what I want them to focus on. They are not getting pain because I'm not hitting them or smacking the shit out of their arms or beating the shit out of their hands, as you call it.
It was literally your exact words, to cause them pain. It's in the recording.
Yeah, but it's not pain to the point where you say, oh my God, they're like abusive, they're crying and they're fucking beating them up. No, it's a sharp, short amount of pain that obviously you have a bigger hand. So just the sheer weight of your hand on their hand will cause pain. So you don't have to smack the shit out of their hand to cause pain. You can even poke a kid and cause pain.
Right, you just literally proved my point. Pain to the point of, and you're determining an arbitrary point where to you, that amount of pain that you're inflicting on a child is acceptable. And that's an arbitrary scale of 0 to 100 on the scale of abuse, period.
No, it is acceptable because it was never considered abuse until now when Pansy's got in office.
He literally just did 2 of these on this list in the same sentence. Can you spot them? I said, you are choosing a point that is arbitrary to where you are saying that it's acceptable. Then his response to my statement is, yes, it is acceptable because of XYZ, which XYZ is also a flawed argument. So that's 3 things. He's going to lead into another fallacy right out of the 2. I wasn't saying whether it is acceptable or not. That's a straw man argument. Now you're trying to justify something else. I was saying there's an arbitrary point where you find it acceptable. You didn't acknowledge whether you're doing that or not, because that's my whole argument. Not whether, yes, you're doing it, and now is that right or wrong? And it's right or wrong because of XYZ, which he will get into the specifics of. Basically, his argument is that he will say in his own words, slavery is not wrong because it was only considered wrong recently in history. You know what kind of people make that kind of argument.
So, I mean, how come it wasn't abuse back then? Nobody had the recognition and the recollection of saying it's abuse. Nobody knew what abuse meant back then.
That's a philosophical, discussion for that. That you could talk about those reasons, but even if we did determine those reasons, that wouldn't justify or not justify our current actions. But either way, it's, you could take with what you want. You are determining from an arbitrary point that this much pain is acceptable to inflict on the child.
And I just told you, yes, you're repeating yourself at this point. So I don't know if you're trying to troll, but it's not working. So what I'm saying is that, yes, it is acceptable because it was only deemed non-acceptable in the recent years. And how come it wasn't back then? Abuse was still prevalent. Abuse was still relevant. Abuse was still going on in multiple households. There's still cases of abuse from the 80s, from the 70s. So how come they weren't kids saying that tapping on the hands and spanking on the butt was abuse? Because it never was. That's why. You're fitting an agenda to a narrative. That's what you're doing.
Absolutely, I'm not doing that at all. And no, dude, I'm not trolling you. I'm not trying to troll at all. No. No, the thing is, it doesn't matter when or if it was accepted or not. It's always been wrong. Same argument could be made with slavery. Why was it all? It was always around since then. Well, it's always been wrong, whether society accepted it or not.
How was it wrong when society was only ruled by religion at that time?
What the fuck did you just say to me right now? Get out of my sight.
Society was literally ruled by religion, monarchy, and patriarchy, which were basically forms of religion because the church and the queen and everybody else were all one at one point, except for the Vatican and the popes. They were their own thing. Other than that, they ran society and they deemed it acceptable. They didn't deem it wrong. But now you deem it wrong because society has changed. But it doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Get out of my sight.
I'm not deeming anything. No. How is it wrong? the way that anything is wrong or not, how we consider things to be wrong or not, based on the premise of human freedom and that a human life is valuable, I suppose. Slavery is wrong, fundamentally. Like, there's no debating that.
So you're saying that it's wrong. You're deeming that action wrong. You just went back on something you said just to say something that I said.
No, I'm not deeming it. I'm observing the fact that based on the premise of if human life is valuable, which everyone agrees that it is, if you're sane, you value existence, pain is not pleasurable, slavery is not okay. It's not good. It's wrong. We would consider it to be wrong, generally. I didn't come up with that idea. I didn't deem it. Like, I didn't deem that the Earth is round, potato-shaped spheroid. It just is, and I observe that fact.
How do you observe that fact? From where?
Excuse me.
What tools do you use to observe the Earth? And don't say satellites, because that isn't proof. And I'm not a flat earther. I believe the Earth is round or whatever. But I don't know how anyone can observe the Earth if we don't have the right tools. We go off of somebody else's words, somebody else's video feeds that they can manipulate.
How? There are several ways that you yourself can show yourself beyond a shadow of a doubt with fully understanding what you've done, and with there being no other possible way, you can demonstrate it for yourself. That is how. It's not my invention.
I didn't say it was. What I'm asking is how. If that is the case, how? And prove it. Prove that you can use these certain tools or education or knowledge that you have of the Earth to figure out if the Earth is actually round or spheroid or whatever. I would like to know. Where did you get these sources of knowledge? What was it, Galileo, Da Vinci? What was it?
Sure, what you're asking. You're asking me to validate all of known science over the radio and voice chat?
Okay, now you're being ridiculous.
Wait, now I'm being ridiculous? How so? No, he literally just asked me to validate all of science. Let's hear that again.
What I'm asking is how. If that is the case, how? And prove it. Prove that you can use these certain tools or education or knowledge that you have of the Earth to figure out if the Earth is actually round or spheroid or whatever. I would like to know. Where did you get these sources of knowledge? What was it, Galileo, Da Vinci? What was it?
Yes, I got it from Da Vinci. He told me all the secrets of the round. Oh, sorry, the flat
You
Earth.
can't validate something like science because science in itself is in theory. So, yeah. Therefore, it doesn't make sense. That's like me asking you to prove God exists. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking you to tell me how you got to the actual conclusion that the Earth is spheroid without actually going into space. But you keep avoiding it.
That sentence is a malformed sentence. It doesn't make sense. Science is a theory. That is nonsense. That's not true. In science, there's what's called theory. That's not the same thing as saying, like, I have a theory about something. That's a different usage of the word. Theory means something very specific within science.
No, theory is in theoretical. Science itself is theoretical.
No,
that's
God,
the thing.
please, no,
You're trying
no,
to act
God, please, no,
where it doesn't
no,
need to be, you know? Where you don't need to be acting that way. You can try and act like you know more than someone, but it doesn't actually mean you know more.
Well, that's wrong. That's incorrect. To say science is theoretical is literally wrong, like I just explained. That's the other way that you define the word theory, theoretical. In science, there's what's called scientific theory using the scientific method. Theory is basically as far as we can come to a fact. It's another way of saying fact in science without saying fact, because it can always change. We're always discovering new things.
Right, which makes it a theory, right? So in total, science itself is theoretical, because everything in science is a theory until proven otherwise. Duh.
Wrong, incorrect. You're not using the word correctly. There's no such thing as everything in science is a theory. No, wrong. You start with a hypothesis. You don't use the word theory and theoretical in science. You just don't.
What is a hypothesis? A hypothesis is something that you think is going to happen before the experiment, right? Therefore, you theorize that this is going to happen. Whether your theory is correct or not depends on how long you do the experiment, how long it takes, and what are the variables, what are the factors, and then you come to a different conclusion at the end of it, right? Therefore, it's theoretical, and everything you did was about theory. Science itself is in theory.
No!
Wrong, incorrect. You do not do anything theoretically in science. There is no such thing as that. If you went to any science class, that will never happen. That's not the way the words work.
You see, but now you're trying to define vocabulary instead of trying to define what actually is science.
Again, no, I'm not trying to define anything. Vocabulary is already defined. I didn't invent the meaning of words.
You see, you're just playing with words. You're being a queerbait. And you know what? I can shut this whole thing down, right? I can do this. I can just power up the channel and then come back a different time when you're not being a douchebag. So instead of trying to correct people on how to talk, actually debate what they're debating with you, because you're just being a vernacular jugular.
No, what I did was literally dismantle every single piece of your flawed logic bit by bit. Then you had no rebuttal whatsoever for anything I said that I called you out on. Then I presented points, and you did not rebut a single one of them. That's what happened. And now you're leaving because you have no recourse and nothing to say. You lose. Epically.
Like you're trying to flow all this stupidity out of your mouth like a jug.
Dude, I haven't insulted you, nothing, and now I'm not a douchebag. I'm not being a douchebag. All I've done is state facts. I'm not defining vocabulary. Words have meanings. The word theory has two different meanings. It's not used that way in science. If you can't accept that, it's not my problem.
No, it's not it's not my fault that you can't understand that science itself, the act of science or finding out what something is in theory is theory. Trying to actually hypothesize something is theorizing something. And you're trying to confuse the two and blur the lines, just like abuse and discipline. You on the other side are what's wrong with the earth. Instead of trying to rationalize something, debate, and teach, what do? You misinform, you joke around, and you subliminally try to fucking change the subject and walk around it.
He's doing another thing that people who are intellectually dishonest and aware of it always do. They redirect and accuse you of doing everything that they do.
So you're not becoming of what you say you are, which is a man of intelligence and integrity. What you are is a joke, and I will come back later. Have a great day.
Wait, you're going to leave then? Oh, that's interesting. Well, no, none of that is true, what you just said, literally. And you're conflating two words that don't mean the same thing. If you think that this is true, show me one single source or reference, anything, a screenshot. But it doesn't exist. That's not the way that it works. In science, a hypothesis is an educated guess. There's a scientific method. There are very specific steps. At the end, you have a scientific theory. Never within the scientific method does any scientist ever mention the word theoretical, theoreticizing, and hypothesizing in the same sentence. If they did, they would be laughed out of the room. That's what a charlatan would do, somebody who practices pseudoscience and doesn't know what they're talking about. So no, I'm not a douchebag. If reality bothers you, I can't help it. It's not my problem. Don't run away like a flat earther. Regardless, that was a very swift subject change when the whole logical premise of the argument that he was stating was falling apart, and I cited examples of why he trailed off onto that, then didn't prove that premise as well, and then left. But then accused me of not debating? Okay. It's a good conversation. I was, but that's the point. Any physical kinetic impact, inflicting pain, you're inflicting an amount of pain that you say is suitable. To discuss whether the moral implications of that beyond that simple fact, you can talk about that, but that fact remains. You're deciding an arbitrary point, a thing that I say this is not abuse. Other people do. By definition, if from 0 to 100, you take a 100% abuse, beating the shit out of a kid, take it down to an acceptable level, you're still inflicting pain on a spectrum, on a scale.
The fuck did you just